All right. So we are going to go ahead and start doing um, weight painting for this character, and we're going to work our way through the process. Um, so first, let's talk about what is weight painting. What is skin weights? What does that mean? Okay. So when I talk about weight painting, I am referring to the process of influencing basically or changing the amount of influence a joint has on the surrounding vertices of a mesh. A mesh vertex, so again, wherever these lines come up and meet together, that point is called a vertex, a vertex. Um, those vertexes, when they are attached, when the mesh is attached to a skin cluster, or it's skin bound or bound to a set of joints, those vertices can take up to 100% influence from a number of surrounding joints. Okay, so think of it as a bucket. Okay, the vertex, you could fill and empty a bucket, okay, with influence from other sources, and that bucket is the vertex. You can fill it up with a little bit of influence from, say, a hip joint, or you can fill it, if you can fill it up with a root joint, or you can fill it up with a spine joint, or you can go completely off the wall and fill up, influence for, say, some of these vertices with influence from an elbow joint, somewhere that shouldn't have influence over that body part. So if we think about it that way, emptying and filling influence into this bucket that represents the vertex, then we can kind of sort of think about how we might go about painting. The objective of doing weight painting is to get the rig to move in a way that looks realistic. We want limbs to fold, but we don't want them to pinch. We want them to have offset, or I'm sorry, offset, not offset. We want them to have fall off to the way the joints are moving. We want the skin to stretch or compress in certain ways. We want this character to act like something that could exist in real life. We also want to paint out in bad influence from extra geometry that we might not necessarily want. So for example, if I open up this jaw, you'll see that the mesh for the gums, there's a lot of geometry that has influence on the upper jaw midjoint, including this part of the lower gums. I don't necessarily want that. I don't need that. And then we may also see that the jaw pivot has influence in areas that we don't necessarily need. The jaw joint 1 down here has influence up here where it's pulling down part of the mesh, and the jaw joint tip may have some influence up here as well. So this is kind of a game of us painting things out and trying to get them to stretch or fold or compress, or however we really need it to work, but we're just trying to get it to work properly. So again, using that kind of bucket metaphor, vertexes are going to naturally want to have their buckets full. Okay, so if you empty the bucket, it's going to want influence from something else. Okay, it's a needy little vertex. It's got to have attention from something. And so so if you don't give it the right place to get attention from, kind of a weird metaphor, but stick with me. It is going to possibly grab influence and vertexes or from joints that are way far away. So say for example, like the head joint, if we empty out the head joint, it's going to go down the chain and say, okay, I need the head is going to want to get influence, say, from the neck joint or the further down the neck joints, until finally you get down to like a place where, like one of these finger joints for some reason might have influence on the head. So when you move the hand, it like rips off part of the head for some reason. So it's a bit of a game of cat and mouse, or whack-a-mole, if you will, in trying to get it to work properly. But it's solvable. You can do it. One of the advantages of us having good topology and having a low resolution or a low resolution mesh here to work with is that it simplifies our weight painting endeavors. Because if you have a ton of vertices to work with, a ton of vertices that you need to weight paint, it's just going to take you that much longer. Okay. That's one reason why I was trying to go as low resolution as I could, but maintain as much detail as I could. All right. So that's one of the big reasons. All right. We can also use our topology to our advantage in the in the weight painting, so that like lips pull back properly, or a throat deforms well, where we may have crinkling or something, or a tearing, if we didn't have good topology. But if we have good topology, then we can kind of weight paint it to where it folds well. Okay. All right. So hopefully you get an idea of what I'm going for and kind of what the point is. Because we've been kind of building to this for a while. So my methodology is that I like to start from the root and work my way out. Okay, so I'll start from the core and work my way up the body and out to the extremities. In that way, we are basically pushing out any influences. I'm going to sound real hippie for a minute, but we're pushing out bad influences out of the body, and we're only leaving the good influences. Man, I need to get some sandals and go do some yoga, I guess. But that's essentially what we're doing. We actually are doing this. We're basic, because the way that the influences work is once you start working away from the core and going out, and the core is here, going out is going down the chain. And so once we kind of start working our way down and out, we're basically working out the influence to the tip of the joint chain and resolving weight painting issues one by one until we're finished. We may have some backtracking we have to do, but that's part of it. But we'll take care of it as we go. Okay. All right, let's go and start off with the root joint. What I'm going to do is, this is where I'm kind of working with right here. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start painting in a little bit. And also something that I like to do is to do a little bit of a test. So I'm going to go to frame 1, grab my leg controller. We'll go to frame 15. And I'm just going to pull up the leg. So you'll see it pops up. Oh, okay. And actually, let me just change my animation from flat to flat, from step to flat. Delete. Delete. So I want to transition here. There we go. So I'm just looking for areas that give me trouble, and I'm going to run them out of town. All right. So let's go back to that root joint. And what I'm going to do is basically just go to a value of 0, bring my opacity down. That's going to be the brush opacity. And I'm just going to kind of paint out some areas like around the hips. And in general, I'm actually going to be focusing more on the left side of the body because I can mirror my weight painting. And this is a really good reason for you to have, if you have a symmetrical body, to have symmetrical topology. It's a really good reason to do it. Okay. All right, I'm going to go down to the groin joint, and you'll see it's got a lot of influence here on the hip. Let me show you the influence bucket essentially. So I'm going to go to my left hip joint, and you'll see that the left hip and the groin joint share a lot of influence on this hip area right here. I'm going to go ahead and put 100% value, and I'm still going to keep my opacity pretty low. And I'm just going to go in and actually just amp up the value right here. And what you're going to see is that when I go back to the groin joint, it's going to have removed value. Okay, so basically I'm just strengthening that area. I'm just going to go and just kind of paint a little bit more down here. Okay. And if I go back to the groin, you'll see that influence that I had here on the upper thigh isn't really there anymore. Because actually I ended up taking that influence out of the bucket and replaced it with a different joint, with influence from a different joint. So we're still at 100% on these vertices that I'm working with. We're just replacing who the influence is coming from. Groin joint, I'm going to go ahead and let that thing take the butt. Let's go back. There we go. There we go. And then right here, I'm just going to smooth it. Let's go a little bit. So just kind of smoothing it out just a little bit. And just going to flood a couple times, and you'll see it flooded out and smooth that area. I'm going to go to my left knee joint. You'll see this area is blue right here. Let's go ahead and just wipe that out. I don't want influence from that area. And then what we want is we want this to fold when it actually closes. So I'm going to go and actually kind of take out influence right through here. And you'll see that because we have that extra topology right here, as I am weight painting this, and then when I test it, it's going to allow it to stretch and compress properly. Look at that. So that's more of what a real leg would do. It's actually folding versus pinching, which is what it was doing before. Okay. And then right here on the knee, I'm going to actually smooth it out. And I'm going to go back up to the hip joint and just smooth it out too. So it stretches more on the front of the hip joint than on the back of, and then so it stretches more on the front of the knee joint than it does on the back of the knee joint. I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit stronger influence here on the back of the calf. And by the way, in terms of weight painting, if you wanted to just work, if you don't want to do the legs first, you don't have to. But I would still work in that pattern of moving from the inside out. So you can work on the arms, you can work on the spine, work on the tail, you know, whatever part you want to work on, but I would still work from the core to the outside. So this is going to have to fold. So let's test it, see how it does. So we want that to fold a little bit more. Something like that. And then I'm just going to give it some, just smooth it out a little bit. I'm going to go back to my ankle joint. Okay. And then I'm just going to basically just reinforce this down to the ball. Okay. And I'll smooth this out. Okay. So I'll kind of smooth that out just a little bit. Just make it look a little bit better. Okay. All right. So this is going to be where it gets a little bit interesting. If you don't have toes, then you probably would just go ahead and just skin it, or just weight paint it, just from the ball down to the tip of the toe, just like you normally would. But since we do have toes, we kind of have some joints that sit on top of each other or share the same region. So what I'm going to do is basically just treat the toes as primary, and I'm not going to worry about the toe tip joint. And I'm going to let the toe joints themselves actually kind of carry most of that work, if that makes any sense. So I could be painting out a lot more there, but I'm going to actually focus more on this. And working directly with the toes to get them to to flex. And so I'm going to paint basically that first segment. And I'm going to go up to the next segment. Just like that. And then that last little bit. Actually, let's go. Watch while you're painting that you don't accidentally like go off and then start accidentally painting up, somewhere you don't need to be. Okay, just be careful of that. And then I would recommend you test your toes, or you're gonna be testing everything, honestly, just to make sure it all works. Make sure it looks good. So you can already see the difference between painting this versus painting that. Like, there's a huge difference in quality already. That's good. Okay. All right. So you'll see that by painting in these areas, I am maintaining that pudginess that you get from that toe, or from that toe joint or finger joint or whatever, because this would be the same thing as you actually doing a finger. So just like that. All right. That middle toe needs a lot of work. So let's go ahead and paint that. Actually, let's go ahead and back up. And we'll just paint in the pattern, and then we'll adjust it. So I need to get rings around the base of each of these. All right, middle toe. And then we'll do the last one. I'm just going to go a little hard on it. Okay. Okay. Just test and see how it goes. There we go. So we got a little something coming in. So we got that ball and that toe tip. See how that has influence still? So I'm going to go to replace 0, and I'm going to wipe that out. I'm going to go to that ball joint, wipe that out. See how it kind of pops back into place where it should. And really, like, the ball joint shouldn't have anything on the toes. They are completely independent from the ball joint, but since they're so close, they're probably gonna get a little bit of something. Okay. So, and then you see here, like, that toe tip joint really doesn't need anything. Actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and flood that out. We don't need it. All right. Okay. Got that. Got that. We'll smooth that a little bit. We'll smooth that one just a little bit. And then we'll smooth that one a little bit. And then this isn't going to really change anything. So you don't really need to worry about doing that one. Okay. All right. Let's do outer toe base. There we go. Okay. Okay. It's not bad, but we can do better. Okay. Outer toe base. Replace. 100% opacity. Turn that down. Pass it up. Let's go back up here. And then our toe joint 2. Be a little bit harsher on there. I'm gonna smooth this out. Okay. So that looks pretty good. All right, the claws. 8 skin weights. So toe tip, left joint. Let's just replace that and just flood that all the way down. All right, left inner toe tip. All right, left inner toe joint tip. Okay, so this one, do 100%. So something like that. Left outer toe. Just going to go and flood that as well, so that'll go to the right position. And I'm not painting it out because when I'm going 100% with a heavy brush, it's really not going to give me any real issue. It appears that I did not click one of the joints for this one, so I need to actually put that in. And then same thing maybe for the dew claw. So I'll need to fix that as well. That's unfortunate. Okay. Go ahead and put that back. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that joint. And then I need to grab left mid-toe joint tip. And I probably need to do the same thing. Do I need to do the same thing here? Maybe. And then I'm assuming I probably didn't get this one. Okay, so I need to add these to the skin cluster. So I'm going to go to Skin, Edit Influences, Add Influence. And I'm going to do, yeah, we'll just go and add them in. So we should be good. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay. So there we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at that dew claw on the left side. Okay. So it's got a lot of influence. Sure looks like it, at least. Oh. There we go. Okay. Just going to try to localize this one as much as possible. So somewhere right about there. There we go. And then do the midpoint. Let's see, I'm just going to hit flood. And then I'm just going to replace it and paint it back in. And that is a valid method if you want to flood out a joint and then just paint it all back in manually. That can work too. I've done that plenty of times. Okay. And then tip joint, I don't need it to have anything, so let's just flood that out. Okay. Yeah, that works. Be a little annoying when it's smooth. And then I'm going to do the replace again. It's a little bit easier to kind of wipe it out. Okay. There we go. All right, there we go. I think we got that leg done. We'll save it. And what we can do is select the mesh. And I'm going to go to skin, mirror skin weights. And we can just make sure we're mirroring it properly. So it's going to ask us, what do we want to mirror across? So if we have an invisible plane going down the body and dividing it in half, that would go down the Y and Z axis. And it would be painted on the positive X, which you can see here. We wanted to go to the negative X. So YZ in direction is positive X to negative X. And click mirror and test it. Looks good. Okay, looks good. Okay. All right, let's take a break and we'll come back and work on another body part.